Azevedo?
Yes.
Hedges?
Yes.
Jafarian?
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you. We're going to do things a little different right now. Oh, we have 1 minute. Okay, I'm sorry. We have 1 more minute.
I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve the minutes of January 30th, 2017.
I'll second that.
Chair Leonard?
Yes.
Vice Chair Rigler?
Yes.
Commission members Azevedo?
Yes.
Hedges? Jafarian?
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you.
One more.
We have 1 more. Oh yeah, February 8th. We have 1 more. February 8th. 11.
I'll make a motion to approve minutes of February 8th, 2017.
I second that.
They already did.
Yeah,
You did it the first time.
January 30th.
We did.
No, they moved January 30th.
There's actually, there's a February 2nd as well. February 8th.
And then there's the February 8th.
Which one is missing?
The
You
February
didn't, Phil, you didn't miss any. You made the motion for January and February in the first motion.
There's 2 in January.
And then we made a motion after that for January 30th.
But I believe what I did was I made a motion for
January 11th.
January 11th. I did not make a motion for February 8th until after we made the motion for that.
Okay.
So the motion stands as a motion to approve the minutes of February 8th.
And I second that.
Chair Leonard?
Yes.
Vice Chair Rigler?
Yes.
Commission members Azevedo?
Yes.
Hedges?
Yes.
Jafarian?
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and real quickly, we're going to change the agenda for 1 item, and we're going to go to business item 4A.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. This is a quick item. That's why we've asked that it be moved forward. This is a freeway sign that's already been approved by the Planning Commission for the Silverlakes Equestrian and Sports Park. After the sign was approved, it was taken for approval to Caltrans. And actually what Caltrans said is they didn't have a problem with it, but it can't go there because of something that's called the Lady Bird Johnson Freeway Act, or Freeway Beautification Act. And what that did is I handed out a letter from Caltrans that explains it. And what it basically says is that when that act was enacted back in '58, I think, it designated certain areas that would be kept rural and prohibited from having freeway advertising. And Silverlakes falls within one of those areas. So since they can't advertise anything but their events, the applicants are asking for a reduction of the sign size from 1,200 square feet to 765 square feet. And because they can't advertise, they were told that the freeway sign couldn't be perpendicular to the freeway, it had to be parallel. So now it's going to be a one-sided sign that only faces the freeway, parallel with the freeway. And because of that, they've asked for 7 additional feet in height to be able to better attract attention to the smaller sign. So they're asking for approval of the reduced sign from 765 square feet to, and then an increased height up to 69 square feet. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation and answer any questions. And we do have a representative in the audience that can answer questions also.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, I'd like to dismiss myself.
Questions of staff, Pat?
I'm a little confused, Steve. So Exhibit B is the new sign, Exhibit A is the old sign that we actually approved.
Exhibit B is the new sign, and Exhibit A is what was approved before.
Okay, all right, thank you, that was my question.
Just so that I'm clear, we approved a sign that would be showing on towards both directions of travel. In addition to that, the city of Norco is going to get benefit from advertising our fairs, our public events, our parades and so on, are you saying that that is, we are no longer going to get any benefit for the city of Norco for that? Silverlakes is the only benefit? Is that what you just said?
I'll ask the city attorney to answer that. My understanding is the city will still get its time on the sign because it's not private advertising.
Yeah, but that doesn't have anything to do with our application.
Okay, so that's not considered private advertising. Okay, and it has to be parallel with the freeway, and it has to, the placement of the sign on the road, it looks like it's very limited in that position as to who is actually going to be able to see the sign unless you're directly next to it. And is there any way at all, I know it's saying, is it saying perpendicular?
It was going to be perpendicular, now it's going to be parallel.
Have we looked at any other place that might be a little more advantageous as far as visibility? I'm even seeing the bend in that fence line, if you're going south a little bit, at least gives it a little more of a visibility factor to the northbound, help me here, the northbound traffic. Where this is said to be situated is just right along the freeway. So unless you're right next to it, you're not going to see it. Is there any way to adjust that, or does Lady Bird have an issue?
Lady Bird actually does have an issue. Because the question came up, well, how did the city of Eastvale get their sign? And that section of freeway is not within, I forgot the term, it's called a bonus area, yeah. So that bonus area is very restricted. And the applicant has been working with both Caltrans and the Federal Highway Administration to get whatever they could out of this sign, and this is all they could get. The only way to get away from it, to be able to do a two-sided sign, they'd have to move it 600 feet back from the freeway.
I think that I'm understanding that it has to be a single side, but it looks like it's actually exactly parallel with the freeway. So unless I'm looking this way, I'm not going to see it. If there's any way that it can be angled a little bit, or I'm at least catching some of it as I'm coming up to it, is there anything we can do on an adjustment to give a little more exposure?
Representative from the applicants in the audience, they can address that. That issue didn't come up with the city. We basically brought forward the request of the applicant, so they might want to address that. I don't know.
Perfect, thank you.
Bill? This is a business item. Is the applicant or a member would like to come and speak?
Yes?
Yes?
Yes.
Can you state your name, please?
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I would like to answer a couple of the questions. Absolutely, the 15% usage for the city of Norco is still part of this. The advertising component that's gone is like we were hoping to advertise different businesses and what have you that are in town to benefit our city and the local businesses, and that's something we can no longer do. So that's what's gone away, but certainly not the 15% of city use. The placement of the sign is nothing but frustrating, and we certainly share your sentiments, John, over at Silverlakes. The sign guy, if you remember him, Milton was the character that was here last time. He has been out there, and we have looked at it and just spent countless hours with staying in regulation of Lady Bird's federal act and what's best visual for the freeway. And this is what's determined to be the best. And the reason is the height is because of the ongoing and which way the traffic is, to have it higher, we'll be able to see it from a distance. And so, and then the placement is exactly where the traffic is coming, where you can see it the most. And so that's why it's placed exactly where it is, and it's all been thought out. And there's also, it's kind of hard to tell on this map, but there's a knoll. And if you get any farther one way or the other, then the knoll hides the sign. The only two places this sign could really go that wouldn't be in, that would be allowed is to have it right absolutely next to the homes in Eastville, like in their backyard. Or then you're fine with that. And then the next direction is Mavericks. And I just want you guys to know too that I really tried, because those of you who know me know that I don't like to take no for an answer. And so I called Congressman Calvert, and we really tried to fight this. This was such a benefit to the city of Norco, and especially, you know, thanks to you guys. I mean, the Horsetown USA got put on the sign. You'll notice on this Exhibit A, it doesn't show that, and that's because that's what we turned into, you guys, but you guys had that Horsetown USA added and all those things. But what happened is, I took it to Congressman Calvert, and Jolynn helped me, and then from there it went to a man named Ian that was helping me from Washington, D.C. to see. I said, this cannot be current. Can we, I'm thinking of my, you know, what I've learned around here, like, isn't the general plan needing updated? And this particular project is 130 acres of open space, and we're doing our due diligence and keeping green belts more than any other business area here, you know, along this corridor for sure. It's, but at the end of the day, what Ian explained to me is the last thing that's going on in the federal government right now is worrying about a little general plan element use. And to think that they're going to start working on something like this would take years, and even if it is outdated, it's certainly not on the top of the chart of any kind of changes or amendments that are going to be made in the federal government anytime soon. So with that, we just decided we best comply, and this sign is the very best that we could do with all the regulations of this act, and with the expertise of the sign company to tell us where to put it and what size it would be to maximize the best interest for the city of Norco. So,
Anybody else have any questions?
no? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Again, this is a business item, and so do we have any cards on this? Go ahead. Oh,
Pat Overstreet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Boy, God bless Lady Bird. Originally, you know, this sign could have been the Inland Empire Hollywood sign for us. It would have just really, you know, rocked the area advertising Horsetown USA. So I guess if it has to be smaller and parallel, it has to be smaller and parallel, but I just encourage you to accept what's acceptable, and we'll get it built and get it up there and advertise as much as possible. My only question is, and maybe Kathy can answer this, you know, when you're sitting on an airplane and you've got your TV screen in front of you, you can't see the guy next to you because there's some weird thing looking at an angle. And yet when you go down the 91 freeway and all those electric signs are, no matter where you are, they're crystal clear. So I'm assuming whatever this projection is on this sign, even if you're at an angle, you'll be able to see it? If anybody can answer that?
Yes, it's the state-of-the-art, highest LED on the market. It's only the best.
Good, well, I hope it goes up, thank you.
thank you. Any more cards? There's no more cards, so I will bring the business item back, and we hear a motion.
I'll make a motion for the approval of the modification of the sign.
I second that.
Roll call, please.
Chair Leonard?
Yes.
Vice Chair Rigler?
Yes.
Commission members Azevedo? Hedges?
Yes.
Jafarian?
Yes.
Motion passed 4-0, 1 abstain.
Thank you. We will go back to the regular agenda and go to number 8, conditional use permit 2017-02. Alma?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, this is agenda item 3A. This is a conditional use permit, is a request for approval to allow a temporary mobile home for the elderly at 1195 Willow Drive, which is located in the U1 zone. The mobile home is intended to be occupied by the property owner's father, who is 77 years old. The project site consists of approximately an acre. It's developed with a single-family residence consisting of 2,026 square feet. The mobile home that's being proposed is proposed to be 757 square feet, proposed to be located behind the existing home, and is proposed to meet the minimum setback requirements of 5 feet from property line, 10 feet away from your structure. What was provided to you in your packet was the site plan, the building elevations, and the floor plan for the proposed building, for the proposed mobile unit. Per the Norco Municipal Code, a temporary mobile home for the elderly is allowed in residential and agricultural zones with approval of a conditional use permit. The intent of this provision is to, in the code is to allow housing for elderly family members who need care or assistance from their family. The mobile home is allowed for the exclusive use of a maximum of 2 age family members of the owner occupant of the main dwelling, and at least one of the occupants of the mobile home has to be at least 62 years of age. And the applicant must demonstrate the need for the family member's care. The conditional use permit application meets these requirements, being that the mobile home is proposed to be occupied by the property owner's father, who is 77 years old. The minimum lot size to be eligible for a temporary mobile home is 20,000 square feet, and the mobile home must be placed to the rear of the main dwelling. The property, the subject property is 43,560 square feet or an acre, and the mobile home is proposed behind the existing building. Where it's proposed, it meets the setback requirements, and the maximum lot coverage is not exceeded. The minimum floor area for a mobile home per the code requirements is no less than 350 square feet, no more than 900, and the proposed mobile unit meets these requirements, being proposed at 757 square feet. The mobile home has to be connected to the city's water and sewer system through the existing on-site connections, and the resolution that was attached to the report reflects this condition. The mobile home, although temporary, has to be secured to the ground and not placed on a permanent foundation, and that's also reflected in the conditions of approval that staff is recommending approval of. And also, lastly, to ensure that the mobile home is not misused, the code requires that the conditional use permit be granted on a 1-year period, which is extended on a yearly basis. And the project has been conditioned to require this according to the code. In addition, the project has also been conditioned so that the applicant obtains approval if the occupant changes. The project has also been conditioned so that if the current owner sells the property, the mobile home has to be removed, and that's reflected in the conditions of approval. As the Commission is aware, in order to grant the conditional use permit, there's certain findings that have to be made, and which have been outlined in your staff report. Just briefly, the findings are the requested conditional use permit will not adversely affect the general plan or public convenience or general welfare of the persons residing or working in the neighborhood thereof. The requested use will not adversely affect the adjoining land uses and growth and development of the area in which it is proposed to be located. The size and shape of the site proposed for the use is adequate to allow full development of the proposal use in a manner not detrimental to a particular area. And lastly, the traffic generated by the proposed use would not impose an undue burden upon the streets and highways in the area. The staff believes that the findings can be made based on the fact that the proposal meets all the requirements. It is exempt from SEQA, and there, as far as affecting traffic, only one person is intended. A maximum of 2 age family members can live in the mobile home, and in this case, it's only one. Staff will conclude presentation. I believe the applicant is in the audience, and a resolution has been attached if the planning commission, in its discretion, determines to approve the project. And with that, I will conclude and answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alma. Questions of staff? Phil? John?
We've had several of these come across, and what is the city, do we have a chart or some sort of a list with a timeline as to when a year hits, and does somebody from the city actually go out and look, inspect to make sure that a family member, an elderly family member, is still, or are we just taking people's word at it, or how does that work?
Basically, as far as the occupant, they have to give us a letter basically saying that the person is still there. That's
So it's never inspected?
on the inside?
Yeah, it's never, nobody ever goes out and says, oh, okay, yeah, the elderly person is still living there. Or we just have a letter on file and that's sufficient?
Yes.
We do inspections. We don't do every one every year, but there are inspections involved periodically with them. But they have to submit a driver's license indicating that the person's still, I don't know how better to say it, around. So.
You're too old to drive. And is this metered electrically? Or is the electrical pulled off the house and it's used, the house meter is used?
It's used it's pulled off of the house, correct? Yes. All the utilities are off the house, yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Danny?
No, go ahead.
Pat? This is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. Would we like to hear from the applicant? If the applicant's out here, would like to speak, would like to come up and say anything, or up to you?
I don't know what there is to say, but.
Okay, all right. We're fine with that. Do we have any cards on this?
No, sir.
I have an opposition, but I just got here, so I'm sorry.
Do you have a card?
No. May I fill out one?
Come on up and state your name, and then before you leave, if you can hand our clerk a card, please, and could you state your name?
Linda Nisley. And, sorry if I'm gonna read this, but I have some copies if you want. Could you speak into the microphone, please? Linda Nisley, 2150 Temescal. And with reference to that temporary mobile home, that's what we're speaking of on Willow. I oppose it at this time, and although I'm probably the age of the person that they would like to live there, I have an issue because of some manure that was stacked there prior to them living there, which wasn't their problem at the time, but it's now mine because it's stacked against my fence. And it's quite high, and it has changed the terrain. And I have spoken with them, and actually today, and I was told that the reason they built it up was for the trees to be secure. And I don't see any trees that manure was thrown on their trees that are close to the house. Their yard butts up to, their backyard, side yard butts up to the back of my yard. Although they may not have created this manure problem, because they purchased it last year, I think they've inherited it. And I've inherited the terrain issue and the water issue. So I oppose it until that is fixed, because I don't want them to take on another problem and have an issue there when they haven't taken on this one. So I would ask that you would consider postponing it until they fix this. It's probably 3 to 5 feet high, next to the fence, and it's manure. It's been covered with a little bit of dirt, but it hasn't been sown in. I have pictures. I know you don't want necessarily old pictures, but you can see the pile of manure that was there.
we're not supposed to say anything. The only thing I can tell you
Mhm.
is if it is a manure problem and it's, horse manure, they do have codes that talk about it.
Right.
So you could, either go online or come to the city and you could file
I did.
a complaint. And,
I did.
And that would be,
I did.
or call one of the council members, but I mean, that would be.
They did, and they came out, looked at it, and took pictures. But it's changing the water flow as well, and it's high, and the manure is 7 or 8 years old, if not longer. It was in a pile. The people that I suppose bought their home, and I believe they were investors, I'm not sure, piled that 7 or 8 year manure against the fence. So it's 3 to 5 feet high, and it does affect my land.
What you can do with that is if you want to wait till the end of the meeting, I can give you my phone number.
Sure.
Or just call me. I'm the planning director. You can
Yes,
call me
sir.
tomorrow, and I'll get a follow-up on the status of your claim.
Well, I know that Javier's been out there and spoken to me, and I believe them as well, because I spoke with them today. And I know they're trying, but they're just trying. I spoke with them about it last fall, and nothing was ever done, so I let it go. And they stopped speaking to me, I suppose, I don't know. So Javier came out, and so did Deputy came out and took pictures.
I will follow up tomorrow.
Okay.
So you can give me a call, and we can give you a status of how it's proceeding.
So again, I ask that you consider postponing this until that is resolved, because it's a mess. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you make sure you fill out a card and hand it to the clerk?
Now?
Do we have any more cards?
They're out.
They're up to the,
To 5 to 7
it's just the little yellow card.
Okay.
Since and you are the applicants?
Yeah.
Can you state your name, please?
I'm Lisa Bernal.
I'm John Bernal.
In regards to Linda's thing, we've already contacted Javier. We spoke to Marvin Sparks as well. Marvin Sparks did not find this. He said everything was clean and, immaculate, is what he told us. So, on the dirt that she's claiming, we did put when putting it up and running it down to an angle so the water will wash down, Javier's gonna come out after we're done and inspect it again. So we are working on that. We've owned the home less than 6 months. So we've kind of walked into a mess. So, so we are trying to work on that, but my father cannot climb stairs, so this is why we are asking. My father is also with us for the mobile home to get in so he can have a home.
Unfortunately, Linda got upset at me when we had our trees cut. I asked him to pile up some wood, and it accidentally touched her fence, and the gentleman came and told me that Linda was upset about it touching her fence, so I had to move it about an inch. So it's kind of tough to work with some people sometimes.
Yep.
We're doing our best. Like
We
I
are
said,
doing our
we've been here
best.
6
We've only been here
months,
6
and we have
months.
every intention on, doing things.
I didn't think, but I could have brought pictures of what we have been working on for the last 2 weeks, so, but I didn't think that was going to be the issue today.
It's been kind of tough living with my father-in-law. I love him dearly, but
Can't go up and down the stairs.
sometimes it's tough for him to go up and down the stairs, and even the driveway himself, sometimes he said it hurts when he goes downstairs. My father-in-law's back here. We're just trying to make his life and our life really.
Thank you. No questions? Thank you.
Could I respond to that, please?
Yeah, it's non-debatable now. Since we have no more cards, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to either questions or
Under discussion.
Or under discussion.
Can we just add a condition that the engineering department is confirmed drainage is per city standards?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna suggest too, just put in as a condition.
Yeah.
Make sure if there's
Yeah,
manure that it's
if
removed.
it's
Yeah, I mean,
First city standards should be fine, right?
I mean, what
I
you're
don't-
limited to considering, right, is that which is on the agenda. But there's nothing wrong with, to the extent that mobile home might have an impact on drainage, requiring that the drainage be addressed by the engineering department. In addition, of course, there's a code enforcement action that's going to go forward.
Yeah, I was gonna say the trailer itself, if there's the drainage from the trailer only, but I think this is a totally different situation. That has nothing to do with the trailer, as long as the drainage from the trailer itself is not causing any problems.
Well, normally, I mean, being that we have a mobile in our backyard, that, it's usually on a pretty much flat area, and they put visqueen down there, and then it's a metal skirt, so I mean, other than what water runoff you're gonna have off the roof line, it would be minimal as far as what the mobile itself would be doing, but, I mean, I can agree on that too, is if we wanna put that condition in, that they at least, look at the drainage situation. I don't have a problem with that either. Any more discussion? If not, I will.
I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution 2017-11, approving conditional use permit 2017-02, with an added condition that city engineering is to confirm drainage is per city standard.
Second.
Chair Leonard,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rigler,
Yes.
Commission members Azevedo, Hedges,
Yes.
Jafarian.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
Item number 2B is a condition to be, moved to the next planning commission meeting, so we can get
I'll make a motion to continue conditional use permit 2016-37 to the meeting of April 12, 2017.
Second.
John, I just want to confirm that we won't open the public
That's
hearing,
right.
because I have two cards
Yeah,
for it.
there's no item to be heard.
So I just want to make sure that you can explain to them that they won't.
Right, public hearing will occur when the item is heard.
I have a motion from member Jafarian and a second from Vice Chair Rigler. Chair Leonard,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rigler,
Yes.
Commission members Azevedo,
Yes.
Hedges,
Yes.
Jafarian.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you. We'll move on to number C, variance 2017-03. Alma.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, agenda item 3C is variance 2017-03. This is a request for a variance from the 14.5-foot side yard setback requirement of the A1 zone to allow a two-story addition in line with the existing 10-foot side yard for the residential home located at 1737 Detroit Street. The subject property is rectangular in shape, consists of approximately 14,374 square feet. It has a frontage on the north side of Detroit Street of 76 feet and a maximum depth of 190 feet. The property size is not conforming, being that in the A1 zone it needs to be 20,000 square feet, and now 2.5 acre for new subdivisions. The lot also has a non-conforming width, which is required to be 80 feet in the A1 zone, which in this case, for this property, is 76 feet. The property is developed with a 967 square foot single family home with an attached front yard. An attached garage of 553 square feet and some small detached storage sheds in the rear of the property. The existing home has a front yard setback of 17 feet, side yards of 5.5 feet and 10 feet, and a rear yard of 128 feet. The home has the minimum side yards are in the A1 zone for a house that was built, I believe it's before 2000, is 5 feet, 12 and 5 feet, but they have to equal 20. Because there's a side yard of 5.5 feet on one side, the other side has to be at least 14.5 feet to equal 20. So right now, the one side, which is 10 feet, is the side that is non-conforming. The existing rear yard setback meets the current requirement being 60 feet, and as it sits right now, it's 128 square feet. Excuse me, 128 feet. As I indicated, the applicant is requesting approval of a variance to allow an addition to the house in line with the existing setback. The applicant is proposing a 2,447 square foot addition, 1,260 square feet on the first floor, and 1,187 on the second floor, to the back of the existing house, and in addition to that, a balcony in the back of the addition. As I indicated, the addition and patio are proposed in line with the existing side yard setback of 10 feet. And in order to continue that side yard, a variance would have to be approved by the planning commission, and that's why this project is before you this evening. Before granting a variance, similar to a conditional use permit, there's certain findings that have to be made, and they have been outlined in your staff report. The first condition is and basically that's the main one. First condition is basically that there are special characteristics attached to the property which do not generally apply to the properties in the area. The property does have special circumstances. The current development standards that are in the A1 zone were basically developed for those lots that meet the minimum lot size, lot width, etc. This property has a non-conforming width of 76 feet, which is required to be 80 feet, and a non-conforming size of 14,374 square feet, which is required to be a minimum of 20,000 square feet. If the required lot width and lot size were available in terms of more property, the existing house would more than likely meet all the setback requirements, and a variance would not be necessary. And that's for the first finding. And again, the proposed addition would not be creating a smaller side setback. It's being proposed in line with the existing side yard setback. Finding number 2, granting of the variance is necessary to avoid practical difficulty, undue hardship, or results inconsistent with the general purpose of the zoning code. The variance is being requesting again because without the variance, the addition can't be built in line with the existing side yard setback. The granting of the variance would not result in material damage, prejudice, or other properties in the vicinity, nor be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare. The granting of the variance would not result prejudice. Other properties in the area have the ability to apply for a variance if conditions warrant, the request for a variance. And the addition will be required to meet all the required. And so the building code, engineering, and everything. Granting of the variance will not be detrimental to or contrary to the general plan. This is in the A1 zone. Additions are allowed, and the A1 zone is consistent with the general plan. And lastly, the granting of the variance will not limit animal keeping on the subject lot. This variance is not for a rear yard. Even with the addition, the proposed rear yard is still being met and exceeds what is required for this property. The resolution for approval has been attached, and staff has recommended that the planning commission review the resolution and at their discretion approve the variance. And with that, I will conclude. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, staff, Pat?
Just the neighbors notified, no complaints. Thank you.
Danny?
You said the front patio, was that permitted to put in later, or was that part of the house when originally?
My understanding it was put in later.
It was permitted too?
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
John?
I'm sorry.
John?
There's appeals. I don't have any questions.
No?
Just simple question. On the calculations for coverage, it included the balcony that you added to the back? That's all.
So, question I don't know the answer, but I'm just asking. The house was permitted, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So when the house was built, the setbacks were already accepted at that time?
That's typically, it's an older house, so more than likely that was the case.
Okay, my only other question is, why is there not, because this is an A120 lot,
Mm-hmm.
why do you not show the horse keeping on these plans?
Because the variance is not for the rear, they still meet the minimum setback. And
Okay,
typically, with the variance, it's not, what is it, they don't, it's unlike like the accessory buildings where they show the, what is that, the required open animal keeping area, that's, the code specifically says that, but if you look at the site plan and take the dimensions,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, so, but I mean, it will be required when they go to pull their permits, correct? Since it's an A120 lot, they would have to show where their animal keeping is, correct?
typically, not for a variance, no.
Well, not for the variance, I mean,
Yes.
when they go to pull the permit itself, if it's approved for them to pull the permit, it would be on their plans.
Not in this case.
Not in this case,
You
no.
can add it as a condition, but for this variance, because it doesn't affect whatever animal area they have in the back, it wasn't added as a condition. The open animal area is required when you're building an accessory building. This is not an accessory building.
And I think I understand where you're coming from, Bob.
And the only reason why, and because I'm a contractor, and I've built multiple properties, and they've requested on the plans that we have show an animal keeping area, so I'm just wondering why this just didn't have that.
And I think I couldn't, in the past, when they've asked for a variance for the rear yard, then that's when they,
No, it wasn't a variance, it's just on, I mean, I've done addition, so, okay, fine, that was it. This is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. Would the applicant like to come up and speak, if they're here? Is the applicant here? Okay. Do we have any cards?
No, sir.
Since we have no cards, I will close the public hearing, and we'll bring it back for either a motion or under comments.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2017-12, approving variance 2017-03.
Can we go to discussion?
Under discussion.
I'm looking, I obviously live in, over down that area. Drive down Detroit, and I look at the plans, I look at the projected pictures. And being in the real estate industry, I look at two things. Is this going to be overbuilt for the neighborhood, or is it going to diminish the value of the neighboring properties? Is it going to overwhelm the neighboring properties because of the size? Does it have access to the horse facilities now? No. The setbacks are already in question, and that's what the variance is for. So I have a real concern about building a property like that, of giving that approval to a house that already doesn't fit the guidelines of the city.
So let's just be clear for just a second.
Yes.
Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, or try me correct me. If they built that exact same building and made it 5 foot shorter on one side, it would meet the setback and it would be acceptable regardless of its size. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. All we're actually discussing is whether or not it sitting on the same setback line is acceptable or not acceptable.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, and I understand what you're saying, John, but in the same token is, and Phil can probably chime in on this one too, is, you know, when you're trying to build something, you want to make it aesthetically correct. So if you're, mostly on a residential piece of property, so if you chop that if you take and chop that 5 foot back, you're gonna have this funky little corner. It almost looks like you just didn't have the money to spend to finish it off. So, you know, I mean, I understand what you're coming from, but because the house was already built, this is what it was. These people bought it. So to me, to sit there and tell somebody that they can't have this building, you know, have their addition put here is, to me, is, you know, is just kind of wrong, but that's my opinion. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I agree that these houses were built a long time ago. We didn't have the measurements and to cause them that kind of headache because it's already built like that, you're already, I don't see why they can't extend it. If they were trying to go into closer, change the dimensions totally, but if they keep it the same size of the house that is now down there, honestly, we don't want to be punishing them because the way the house was built and we changed our codes and the way it was, and that's how I feel. That I don't think they're doing anything. They're going straight up. They're not going, like you said, they're not going into the horse property. Number one thing to look for.
No. Yeah.
I have no problem with it. If it's overbuilt for the neighborhood, it's overbuilt for the neighborhood. That's what they've decided, that they've chosen that they want, so I think I don't have a problem.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Chair Leonard,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rigler,
No.
Commission members Azevedo,
Yes.
Hedges,
Yes.
Jafarian.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-1.
Thank you. Real quick, I'm gonna ask this because it's maybe lengthy. Do you want to take a break before this, Pat, or do we want to just go ahead and continue? Well,
Maybe Phil wants.
or Danny,
Yeah,
or
make it
Phil,
Phil.
how about, or Phil, or John? I mean, we may be running a little long, a little lengthy, so I just want to ask before we do that.
I'm fine, thank you, Bob.
Figure I'd ask. We'll go ahead and move to number D, zone code amendment 2017-01.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. This is actually a combination of items D, E, and F. It all deals with the same issue, and that is the recommendations from the city's accessory building ad hoc committee, of which 2 Planning Commission members were part of, along with 2 city council members. Through several meetings, they've come up with recommendations. The intent of it was to look at the city's procedures and come up with ways on how to improve it so that the review of accessory buildings would work better than it has been in the past. What I'm going to do is, you can tell, we're going to go through the slide presentation that was presented to the joint City Council Planning Commission meeting on January 30th. There's a couple of changes, but logistically, before I start, I want to, for the audience and for the Planning Commission, understand that what's being proposed by the Accessory Building Ad Hoc Committee, all the changes would apply to every zone in the city, including the specific plans, where a single-family home is a permitted use. So it applies to the AE zone, the A1 zone, the R1 zone, the Norco Ridge Ranch specific plan, and Norco Hills specific plan. In your staff report, and I didn't include it in the slide presentation, but I added a table, and it kind of it outlines the problems we've been having in the past where we had tried to control the size of accessory buildings through lot coverage. And in the table, you'll notice that all of the zones in the city, including the 2 specific plans, they all had different determinations on how you determine lot coverage. And some are more complicated than others. And so we always had a problem trying to apply one rule across the board to all of these zones. What the Accessory Building Ad Hoc Committee has recommended is that rather than try to control it through lot coverage, that we actually apply the regulations to the building themselves. And in that way, what's being proposed tonight can be applied to all of the zones as opposed to doing one at a time and trying to make different kinds of rules fit different kinds of zones. So with that, I will start there's a couple of changes that I need to add at the end and minor, but I'll start the presentation. It worked before. Okay, there it is. All right, so basically, as you're aware, from the joint meeting on January 30th, this was an ad hoc committee that was set up by the City Council, and the objective was to look at the criteria and the process for evaluating accessory building applications and to come up with improvements for that process. The concerns at the time when the ad hoc committee started their meetings was the proliferation of large accessory buildings, the massing of them, the lot coverage requirements pertaining to accessory buildings, preservation of animal keeping areas, lack of objective criteria for conducting impact analysis on adjacent properties in the neighborhood, the lack of follow-up procedures to ensure that conditions of approval were being observed, and architecture was not blending these buildings in with the existing home, the primary residential units on the property. So what the ad hoc committee decided to do in their recommendations is to first come up with non-discretionary requirements that all accessory buildings would have to meet, and we'll go through those further into the slide presentation. And then additional information would be required from the applicants in the application to aid the Planning Commission in its discretionary review of these buildings. And one of the goals at the beginning of the process was to categorize the buildings into 3 different types of buildings. And the conclusion was that these 3 categories would pretty much cover all of the accessory buildings that are asked for in the city of Norco. The first one being large recreational and agricultural vehicle parking buildings. The second being animal keeping shelters for large animals. And then the third is basically all other accessory building types. So also what the ad hoc committee decided to do, and after discussions in the first meeting, was break the discussions down into 5 different critical categories that they felt were the issues that needed to be discussed. And the first of those was the massing of the buildings themselves. Currently, the massing is regulated by controlling setbacks, heights, and the lot coverage restrictions in the individual zones. One of the problems with that procedure is that while there is a maximum height of 20 feet, that can go right up to the minimum allowed setback of 5 feet from side and rear property lines. And the result is that the potential for large accessory buildings to be very close to property lines. So to address this, what the ad hoc committee did was to implement a gradual setback requirement based on an exhibit that I'll show you in a minute. All the setback requirements would start from a base point of 8 feet high for an eve height at the minimum 5-foot setback requirement. And this goes for every category of accessory building, regardless of what the use is. The other recommendation to address the massing issue was to limit the size of accessory buildings, and then to put a lower height limitation on the buildings themselves. So this is the graph. This will be included, if approved, this will be included in the Norco Municipal Code. And basically, if you can follow the graph, on the left side of the graph, as the height of the building increases, so too does the setback requirement from whichever property line it's adjacent to, whether it be a side or rear property line. So the arrow that you see on the graph is for the maximum height, which I'll go through later, is being recommended to be changed from 20 to 18 feet. So that arrow represents a maximum height of 18 feet. And if you follow it across, the setback requirement for that 18 feet would be a minimum of 20 feet, as opposed to 5, what it currently is right now. The next category that the ad hoc committee wanted to address was the process itself, the conditional use permit process. Currently, any building that exceeds 864 square feet requires a conditional use permit. The problem is the process, as it's contained in the Norco Municipal Code, was designed for commercial and industrial uses or more intense uses in residential zones such as churches and schools and that sort of thing. It never really was intended to apply to ancillary residential uses as it was being done prior to, which instigated this review process. And the problem with it, that there was no subjective and it didn't provide a consistent approach to controlling the size of accessory buildings, which was an issue with, pretty much everyone elected to the city council and then appointed to the planning commission. We were having difficulties figuring out ways to control the size of them. So the recommended practice from the ad hoc committee was, rather than try to manipulate the CUP process into something that wasn't designed for, that there should be a new application process designed specifically for accessory buildings. And again, getting to those non-discretionary and discretionary requirements that the applicant would have to provide to assist the planning commission in its decision. And then that new application would have findings developed specifically to an accessory building use rather than trying to apply a commercial designed finding to a residential ancillary use. Lot coverage, early on, this was an issue that needed to be addressed. As I stated earlier, the approach that's been taken by the ad hoc committee, or recommended by the ad hoc committee, to control the buildings themselves as opposed to trying to control them through various lot coverage calculations. The lot coverage issue has pretty much disappeared, and I'll explain that further in the slideshow presentation. Currently, for A1 zones, the lot coverage is dictated by 40% coverage of the flat pad area, and that includes pools and coping areas around the pools. Problem with that is that was a difficult regulation to apply to the Norco Hill specific plan, where the lot coverage is dictated in two different categories. One for the residential building, which is different than how it's calculated for the accessory buildings. So we never were able to come up with this kind of a regulation for the Norco Hill specific plan, and that was part of the instigation behind this whole review. And as stated, trying to do it through lot coverage was ineffective and inconsistent. As I stated, what the ad hoc committee decided to do was put controls on the types of buildings based upon the use of those buildings. We can go through that. Okay, so the first category is the large recreational and agricultural vehicle building. The maximum allowed size for this kind of a building is 1,000 square feet. The maximum height at roof eave, which is the point where the wall meets the roof, is 14 feet. And then the maximum height of the structure is 18 feet. Now, in addition to that, because an RV would take up a lot of the room in that building, it was determined that there should be, if the applicant wanted to, an allowance for an additional 400 square feet for an alternate accessory building use, such as a workshop or small animal keeping, whatever it might be, that would allow to be an additional 400 square feet, but this additional 400 square feet would only be allowed to be 8 feet at the eave height and maximum 14 feet. So what you end up with is a building similar to this, where the RV structure is taller and the rest of the building is at a lower height. The second category of buildings was the animal keeping shelters for large animals. Because of the city's various lot sizes, there is no consistent lot size it was determined that the best way to allow this and promote